Welcome to Anthony's Outdoors, and in this episode, I'm going to talk about the gear that Courtney and I use on our annual early spring pike fishing trips. So while I was out here cleaning up the boat, getting it ready for our upcoming trips this spring and summer, I decided that, you know what, I haven't done a pike fishing specific video on gear, lures and fishing rods, reels, line, nets, and all that kind of stuff yet. So I figured that this would be a good time to do it, seeing as that in just a couple weeks we'll be heading up for our annual pike-a-thon trip in northern Wisconsin. Now, pike fishing doesn't need to be overly complicated. You can use spinning reels, you can use bait casting reels, spinning rods, bait casting rods. Anything that you have can probably work for the style of fishing that we're going to be talking about today. So we don't really use live bait in the early spring for pike, just because we're more of a, I guess we call it power fishing. We use a trolling motor, we get up really shallow into shallow bays with any weed growth we can find or any down timber, little rock piles, and we just pick it apart with a various selection of lures, and depending on the weather conditions for that day, will dictate what lures we use. Now, before we get into the lures, I want to talk a little bit about the rods and reels that we prefer to use. So, what I have here, this is a Mojo bass rod by St. Croix. This is a 7-foot 4-inch rod, fast action, heavy power. Now, this is one of the heavier bass rods in their lineup for the Mojo bass. Retails between $120 and $140 depending on where you go and what they have in stock. Love this rod for what we do. On top of the rod, we have a Lew's Mach 1 reel here. This is my preferred reel, bait casting. When you see some of the clips that I'm going to show you here, you'll understand why I prefer bait casting over spinning reels, mainly because we are dropping these lures in pinpoint locations, because if you're off by just a few inches, you might not get anything. So you really have to be accurate. You got to be able to stop that bait on a dime, and bait casters allow you to do that. As for line, again, for some of you out there, this may seem a little bit like overkill, but we've had some scenarios where running a heavier line paid off. Now, we run, where do I have it here? We run 30-pound Suffix 832 braid. This is our preferred braid. It seems to last a long time, resists the little nicks and stuff that you get with pike. Sometimes we run a really thin steel leader, sometimes we don't, and if we don't, we like to have that heavier line just to hold up to their super sharp teeth. Now that we got the rod, reel, and line out of the way, we can talk about some of the lures that we use and when we use them. Our absolute go-to during our early season pike fishing is the Mepps number 5's Aguilas. And we have, as you can see here, there's a whole box full of assorted colors, and we have fluorescent blades, and we also have like the copper and nickel style blades. And depending on the weather, like I had said earlier, we will throw one or the other more frequently. We have found that when we have sunny, clear conditions with a slight breeze, the nickel and copper bladed Mepps number 5s outproduce the fluorescent bladed ones. Now, if we get some cloud cover like we have out today, you want to throw the fluorescent blades. Just gives a little bit more pop in the water, and we also fish dark stained water this time of year. The water warms up a lot faster, and they really seem to key in on those fluorescent colors when it's a little bit more cloudy out. Again, these are our absolute go-tos. This is the very first lure that we start off fishing as soon as we get out on the water to gauge what the fish are doing, and if they are following, are they just hammering it as soon as it hits the water, or are we having to do something a little bit special to that lure? Are we having to put a little pause in there, speed it up, slow it down to get them to bite? And that will allow us to go forward with our lure selection. Now, anybody that knows pike fishing knows that spoons catch fish. They just do. They flat out catch pike. I can't explain it. They just do. It's a really goofy lure. It has a crazy erratic action, and it kind of hits a couple areas when you're fishing it. You can power fish it. You can cast it a long way. They sink a little bit deeper, which is nice when you have cold front conditions, and you can flutter the bait where you reel it in and you kind of let it flutter down and settle back into itself. We prefer this is a 3/4 ounce. This is a fluorescent 5 diamonds. 5 diamonds are my preferred style. We prefer the Daredevil brand. They just seem to run more true. They just seem to have a better action, better quality hooks, better quality paint. They are more money than your other store brand style spoons, but these just are better quality all around. And again, I'm not sponsored by anything that I'm saying here today. None of these manufacturers sponsor our channel whatsoever, so I like to use what works, and we have found that the Daredevil brand just outperforms the other ones out on the market. If you've been fishing for any length of time, you know about cold fronts. And yep, they suck. It could turn a really good day of fishing into nothing, where you don't see another fish the rest of the day, especially if you're into muskie fishing like we are. So pike, being that they're cousins of muskies, they react a little bit the same way. They are a little bit more active during cold front conditions than muskies are, and we have found a particular style of lure that just really seems to work when you got a nasty cold front that comes through in early spring, drops those temperatures down, you get that crashing north wind. It can make for some really difficult fishing, but we've learned that if you slow down and use a jerk and pause style lure, you can still put them in the boat. Lure that we've really come to love on this channel, and it's worked for smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, and pike, is the Rapala Ripstop. Come on, focus. This little guy right here is a fantastic bait, and I am shocked it took as long as it did for a manufacturer to come up with a lure like this, and I wish I would have thought of something like this. When you cast this lure out and you bring it back, the deadliest part about this lure is when you stop on that pause, it stops in the water. It doesn't travel like a lot of other lures do, like this X-Wrap here. When you yank this thing, it kind of glides a little bit till it pauses. Sometimes that works, but in a heavy cold front, when you jerk this thing, it stops dead in the water, and it is deadly. All right, now that we got a bunch of the lures out of the way, let's talk about some of the other gear that you're going to want to have. You're going to want to have a net. I know a lot of you guys like to hand land your fish, but let me tell you, if you've ever tried to hand land a fish and they've shooken their head and sent hooks into your hand, you will be thankful that you have a net from that point going forward. Along with a net, you're going to want to have a high quality pair of needle nose pliers. Pike are notorious for inhaling the lures, and the best way to get them out is with needle nose pliers, so you save your hands from getting cut up on their teeth. You'd be surprised at how quickly a trip can go south when those teeth cut your hand open and it becomes infected. It's not a fun thing, and it can really put a damper on your trip. Well, that about does it for this episode of Anthony's Outdoors. I got to get back to cleaning this boat so we can get it out on the water for our next couple trips. If you like what you saw in this episode, hit that like button, comment down below on where you like to go pike fishing, and please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, as well as following us on Instagram and our Facebook page. By doing that, that ensures that you'll be in the drawing for our 1,000 subscriber giveaway, which should be coming up here in the next month or so. And as always, thanks for watching.